Good afternoon, Fraser. You okay?
Afternoon, Finn. How's it going? Bike issues are here. Bike issues.
For my hour allotted exercise. Well, we'll get on to whether it's an hour allotted or not, and had a puncture, so I was a bit longer than I thought I was going to be. But well, it's a month now since we've done this, and the world of sport has changed dramatically in that month. But as for us, we've had 3 guests on, all been great. They've all been really good, all been interesting. One thing about all 3 of them, though, they're all sort of endurance athletes. You're Sarah doing the Ironman, Richard getting ready for his Coast Path Challenge, and Sanya, an ultra runner, who's also getting ready for her Coast Path Challenge. Which brings us on to how much people can actually train, isn't it? So, well, just a little catch up to see how things are getting on. What I wanted to do is have a chat about this golden 60 minutes or so.
That's as good a place to start as any. And of course, this was quite relevant with Sana when we spoke to her last week, wasn't it? Because there's someone who needs considering more time than that outside if she's, her daily exercise isn't restricted to 30 minutes out, 30 minutes back, and what have you. I think this is, we always reiterate here when we speak on this, there's bigger things in sport going on at the moment, and no one would argue against that. But we've still got to scrutinise things, I think, and from a sporting view, this has been a very ambiguous part of the lockdown, because this wasn't actually set out as any kind of lockdown rule, right? So it's not actually a strict law, if you like, at the moment, that you can only be out for an hour of exercise. I think where the ambiguity came in was Michael Gove saying there is no time limit, but I would suggest an hour of exercise is enough. Now, you can't really come out with a statement like that unless you're going to put it into place, I don't think, because firstly, you're not actually binding people to that if you're suggesting it, and secondly, as you say, and as we've already spoken about, so many people are out for longer. We've spoken about Strava in the last couple of weeks. You look at people still on bike rides, people who are still entered to Ironman Wales, who maybe were preparing for long course weekend before the cancellation and so on. They're out for 2-3 hour bike rides. They're not essentially breaking the law. They're breaking the advice. They're not breaking the law. So I think if you're going to come out with that sort of thing, you need to either set it as a lockdown rule, right, and make it a clear guideline and say, look, the police have got powers to arrest people or warn people if they wish, if they suspect they have been out longer for exercising than an hour, or you've got to scrap it because people aren't going to stick to it.
Yeah, there's a good few points there, right? The first thing is, obviously, which has highlighted me to this, is that this 60-minute thing came out that you could only have 60 minutes of exercise. I saw that pop up on a few things online. I saw a few police forces say you've got 60 minutes to do it, to exercise. That's all you're entitled to. And, I've been abiding by that. It hasn't been a problem for me. But then what I've seen in the last couple of days is people challenge that. And I've seen, on Strava and other things, there's people who hold positions of authority who are out for a lot longer than 60 minutes on their bikes or running, which made me have a look at it. Really, the problem is when you bring out new legislation, which this is, and don't get me wrong, and I don't think anyone's saying this, you've got to protect the health service, you've got to protect the spread of COVID-19, you've got to do everything you can do to make to make the virus spread less, and also to sort of combat the issues, because there's bigger things going on. But there's, new legislation was brought in, and with any new legislation, once it's brought in, it's written as the law, then you've got the way it's interpreted, then you've got guidelines, then you've got different police forces will have different policies about how they enforce it. You will have people will be issued tickets, and they will challenge these tickets in court, and then you'll have sort of state cases or guidance come down from magistrates or from the courts to say, this is how it should be done. So all this thing has been thrusted on us, and I think, if you look at what it actually says, I had a look at what, this is the actual law that came out, the public health sort of law to prevent the sort of spread of it. One form of exercise a day, for example, they run, walk, or cycle alone or with members members of their household. So it's quite straightforward. You can't be meeting up in the park to do a boot camp.
No.
You can't be meeting up, for a group of lads or lasses to have a five-a-side game of football or touch rugby or anything like that, and we all agree with that. But when you look at the deep down of why they've allowed the exercise, and one of the things, I think it's Matt Hancock, sort of said, the health and social care secretary of, it's for people's health and well-being, and you could say, well, if you take Sanya for instance, an hour run is probably going to make her more frustrated than anything. So
detrimental.
It is detrimental, and what you've got to have then is for some people's health and well-being, they're going to need more than an hour. And if they're doing that by themselves in a rural, isolated place, and they're not seeing anyone else, is there any problem with it? But as with anything, what you have there, and I see people that we know, we're probably both friends with on social media and things like that, have seen really being critical of people doing more than 60 minutes and jumping on and saying, the guidelines say you're not to do more than 60 minutes. Why are you doing this? You're putting everyone at the thing. And it's becoming one of those sort of, social things that people are falling out over, Well,
it mirrors almost the week we had in the UK leading up to the actual lockdown. I think it was on that Monday night, the lockdown, I think the 23rd, I believe, off the top of my head. The week leading up to that, there were still pictures of groups of guys and girls gathering in pubs together, weren't they? And that was after government advice that there shouldn't be any mass gatherings, you shouldn't be gathering in groups of people, you shouldn't be close together. But these guys weren't actually breaking the law, They were ignoring advice, and they were being suggested to do otherwise, but there was no powers to implement anything on them. And this is almost the same situation you've got here. If you're going to advise people that they can only exercise for an hour or go outdoors for an hour, but not actually set it in stone, inevitably people are going to break it, Yeah. Like you say, it's almost come to that situation now where there were plenty of people I know that week who were looking at these pictures of guys in pubs all together and things, and labelling them idiots and morons and so on. And they were there, hands out, saying, well, we're not breaking the law, what are you going to do? But this is where it gets maybe a bit more intricate and complex, what you've just brought up there then with someone like Sana, who is going to have to really improvise now and work at home, and anyone else, people prepared for Ironman. We've spoken to Sarah, haven't we, as well about that, and the distances they have to cover. If that hour-long thing does come in, it's very detrimental physically and as you just rightly pointed out, mentally, because this is where, as well, the home space argument comes in. I know a few people who are lucky enough and have got the setup at home where they've got the machines, the weights, maybe enough exercise machines maybe to get by. There are people who haven't got that. There are people who are maybe in single flats in cities, who've got no access to gym equipment, and their only salvation, they can still be training for something, and their only salvation might be that hour of exercise or 2-3 hours, as some people are doing if they're training for something. So how do they negotiate it?
I think the thing is, what, like, you go back to what Michael Grove said, and I've got it sort of written down here, what he was asked, how long can people exercise for? It was asked to him, and I think it was on the Andrew Marr show, and he said, obviously it depends on each individual's fitness, but I'd have thought that for most, a walk of up to an hour or a run for 30 minutes or a cycle would be enough. Which, and if you look at that, first thing he says, it depends on people's individual fitness.
Yeah.
And he'd have thought that for most, a walk for 60 minutes is fine. Yeah. And it's more than probably a lot of people would have walked before the lockdown. But, so what he's not saying there is that you can't do any more than that.
No.
He's just saying that that's what they would suggest. And I mean, the thing is as well, it's obviously quite clear that you have to do it by yourself and you can't meet up with people, or they've got to be people from your own household. So, and then when you see people, I know sort of some police forces, were quite strict on it. And I can see the guidance that they put out about it. It was no more than 60 minutes. They jumped on that. You had other police forces then sort of doing it differently. You've got, the Welsh Assembly government have put a different slant on it than, Health England. So you've got England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, all got slightly different sort of views on it. You've got 46 police forces in England and Wales who probably all got different guidelines on how to police it. You've got ministers saying one thing, this is how we should be done. You've got the law saying another thing. So it's also quite confusing. And then what you've got then is the experts on social media, telling people you're dangerous. But in reality, are they being dangerous? So if you lived in Pembroke, just say, and you thought, right, I'm going to cycle the Ironman angle route in the morning from my house. I'd come out of my house on my bike, I'll cycle that. It takes me 3.5 hours. I haven't seen anyone. I've done it early in the morning. Is that irresponsible? If you were, say, living in Swansea and you thought, I'm going to drive down to Tenby, park my car up and cycle the Ironman loop, that would be irresponsible. Because
Yes. The only risk you have is that you have to be sent about it in terms of injury, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? I mean, as it happened, post path is closed, so that this argument is going to be hypothetical now. Let's just say it wasn't closed. I think I remember considering, should I go on a run on the coast path, and then if you were to go out on that or any kind of dangerous terrain, let's say, whether it be cycling or running, and you do it on maybe an adverse weather, right, and it's difficult, and you go out and you get injured, then the argument there is obviously you're taking up the time of the emergency service who have to come and get you when they're so limited as it is at the moment anyway. So that would be the only note of caution I'd give to what you said there. But otherwise, no, I agree with what you say. I think if you're not as long as you're not driving to do it, as long as you're not breaking the social distancing rules when you do it, and as long as you're sensible about how you do it, if it's a bike or whatever, you wipe your equipment down as soon as you come in, which is standard for cyclists anyway. I don't think there is harm in people going over an hour. I think it's up to that individual to just do all the things that we've just emphasized there. Even it's quite, just listening to that Michael Gove statement, I actually went over that myself today as well, and I thought quite the most telling couple of lines of that there was, I'd have thought. I'd have thought that for an hour most is enough. It's such an ambiguous statement. Yeah. There's no way you can argue that's any kind of guideline which people should be adhering to it. And even you've talked about the walking thing there. I've done a couple of walks with my household, which includes 2 young children, and they would normally probably take me 25 minutes, half an hour. But if you've got young children, whether it be on scooters or walking or moding or however you want to put it, that then pushes it up to an hour and sometimes beyond as well. So I think that area hasn't really been addressed as well. That if you can allow people to go out as a household and which includes young children and infants and the lot, which I think is probably a godsend for a lot of parents at the moment, being able to get out. You've got to factor in that. It's not so easy just to waltz somewhere and back within an hour.
I tell you what, I was talking to someone the other day about this, and they were saying that what you're saying, that they take the children out for their hours as a chaperone, as they see it, and then they go out for a run in the evening because that's not exercise for them, as you're quite rightly saying. It's they're saying, and they were saying how strictly that they, as a family, that they were all sticking to the guidelines, and that's the only sort of thing that one of them was breaching, because they said that's not exercise for them. They're taking, as you said, taking them out and you're dragging them along. You're walking at a slow pace. You're trying to give them a bit of a thing. But I mean, and as well, I mean, this, and I understand totally about putting, you don't want to be doing anything that's dangerous, and you've got like beaches are closed. They don't want people to go surfing. They don't want people to go out on pleasure boats. They're saying the problem is if you're cycling, you're putting yourself probably in a danger. You can have an accident. What you've got though as well, you've got the cyclists who are looking to do 3 or 4 hours, probably experienced cyclists.
Yes.
So you've got everyone else going out for an hour. There are everyone else who are going out who've just started doing cycling because you know, they've got the bike out of the shed to do some stuff because, you know, they need to get out there. Is them cycling for an hour any less dangerous than someone who cycles all the time cycling for 3 hours? You know, people went and bought loads of trampolines, you know, when the lockdown was coming, you know. You know, people doing drunken TikToks, you know, and dancing in the houses and playing games. You know, are any more, you know, people sitting at home smoking? Are any, you know, whatever? Are these people all putting extra pressure in some way or another on the emergency services, like, you know? But, you know, you're saying that people, and it's not, I don't think that the government sort of coming down harsh on this. It's more people on social media, you know, that you know, people who are policing their own neighbourhoods, and they're saying do this and do that. So and so's done this. You know, we got someone who's not from the village in the village, and you know, there's a lot of panic, like, you know. And
it's probably slipped under the radar to a degree, especially in the news this week, because there's so much more significant things going on with it. You know, the daily death toll, and then the issue now with the care homes today has dominated the headlines. So I think it's certainly more of a niche argument, if you like, and a branch off of all this. But no, it is. I do think it would be good to have some kind of government clarification on it, because, like you say, there's once things, you know, get going on social media, obviously it's hard to stop the hurricane, if you like, and there's some quite, you know, personal attacks going on there over this, and some indicative things being said. So I think it would be, and it wouldn't take long, you know, and I understand that it's not a priority in terms of government issues right now, but I think it would be good for this to be clarified.
Yeah, and it is, because, you know, as you're saying, you've got people having a go at people about doing it, and what, you know, a week ago I could see, you know, I think the police were being quite things saying 60 minutes. I think they've stepped back from that now, but then some forces may still be quite strict on it, and I can see, you know, even like, you know, driving, they're saying, you know, you're not to drive to walk or to exercise, which, you know, I agree with that, but it's easy for me to say that because of where I live.
Yes.
You know, I don't have to walk, or, you know, I don't have to drive anywhere. I can, you know, quite easily exercise from where I live. But, you know, but then I could see that, you know, I think one of the ministers said, well, I don't think it's unreasonable for people to drive 5 minutes, you know, to walk their dogs. But then I can see, you know, the Welsh Assembly government sort of stance on that was, no, in Wales, this is our guidelines. But then I can see then that the College of Police have put out guidance about enforcement, saying that we don't want to sanction people or have enforcement against people who are driving to exercise a reasonable distance. But then what it says then is, it doesn't say what a reasonable distance is, and it's for the officers' discretion. So what you could have is, you know, 40,000 officers all using their discretion, which is all going to vary and be different. So, you know, you have one person who may be issued a ticket for driving 5 miles, you know, to a secluded area to run, and then someone being able to drive 30 minutes because they've been, you know, stopped by someone else.
I saw this today. This is another thing you can't come out with, you know, statements and again laws like that unless you have to be very specific, you know, about what the distance is. And then if they were to come out with that and the distance was whatever, a couple of miles, whatever, and people were to break it, then fine, be it on their head, you know. But you can't come out with as long as it's a reasonable distance, because, like you say, that's going to vary for every individual, and it's going to vary probably for every police officer. You know, that again, it come back to the words we used a lot already. It's just vague and it's ambiguous.
It is, and my thing is that, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, we should all grab. I've been sticking to 60 minutes, and I've, you know, got out once a day, whatever. But, you know, it's really to say to the people who are criticising others, you know, actually you're criticising people where in reality they're not, you know, they're not breaking the law, you know.
No.
And just because someone is cycling 3 hours on a bike, it doesn't mean to say that they're being irresponsible.
No.
You know, they could be, you know, very keen cyclists, very experienced cyclists. They need that 3 hours to give them their mental and health and well-being and physical things. You know, the 30-minute bike ride to a lot wouldn't be anything, like, you know, to a lot of cyclists, you know, it wouldn't even be worth getting the bike out. So, So, it's just that people really shouldn't jump on their high horse.
No,
to an extent.
No, I completely agree. I do think, again, this come back to the original vagueness of the government. You can't. They've put that out there, and it is allowed people to a sense to jump on their high horse, but jumping a high horse about something which isn't technically in place. And it's that statement Michael Gove made is just caused so much disruption to some people, and it is given. It's been left open to all types of interpretations, and such is the modern world. They're taking their own interpretation and implying it.
Yeah. If we'd have just said 60 minutes is what the guidelines are, 60 minutes is what the rules are, we'd all be happy. You can't.
No argument. Yeah, well, not everyone would be happy, but there'd be no argument. Yeah.
No. And then people would be be mindful of that. That's what they can do. But when you leave it open, and I think the problem is that you're relying on people to do the right thing, which isn't always the case. With the restrictions that they've had to put on with shutting car parks, shutting the national park, the coast pass, and all these other draconian sort of methods they've had to do them because there is a minority of people who just take the piss,
Yeah, absolutely. Or light-hearted one I saw on the endurance scene this week was a story was actually passed on to me by someone. I looked into it. It's quite interesting because one I'd never known myself was we talk about Tembe is almost like this become pretty central for endurance events, isn't it? When the Ironman weekend and the long course weekend, which has had its own controversies and things going on. And one guy he would have been 136 this Monday, just gone, who certainly didn't need an hour exercise. There was a guy called Frederick Davis. He was known to everyone as Tembe. He was born there, so Tembe Davis was his name. And back in 1909, I think I read it, he was representing Tembe up in what was the then World Half Mile Championships in Pontypridd. And he won them. It was 880 yards. It wasn't measured in meters in those days. Over 880 yards. And he actually clocked 1 minute 57, I think, to be World Half Mile Champion. If you consider that how the pace that is, I do that, and hypothetically that's under 4 minutes, right? Whether he could have kept that pace up for 4 minutes, I don't know. But there was another 30, 40, 50 years, maybe 54, maybe when Roger Bannister became the first man under a mile. I mean, that's a phenomenal pace we're doing back in 1909, and that was before the days of running spikes and physios and what have you. So that was, with all the like you say, the arguments that have come this week over the exercise thing. That was actually a light note. But
did he have that on his Strava though? How do we know he did it? If it wasn't down,
I don't know if it counts. Facebook either, but no, it was interesting, and he's listed. If I'd never heard of him, but if you list it, if you look at the archives of Welsh running, he's listed as one of Welsh's best ever runners. Tembe Davis.
Tembe Davis. Yes, I'll have a look at that. I did see it pop up. I will have a look at that.
Google it later. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm talking about running now as well, and speed and everything. Just one more thing that's popped up on the last people we've been interviewing. The old man, another controversial thing. Again, we're controversial now. I'm locked up here. Men v women now, right, in sport.
Right.
When I about 15 years ago, I used to work in an office, and there was a guy I worked with and a girl I worked with, and they used to argue all the time about men and women and who were better, And she was quite sporty, and she'd say, "Oh well, a sport," and he'd say, "No, men are better. Or, name me one sport." And she'd be saying to me, "Help me out. Name me a sport at the top level that women can beat men." And I said, maybe floor gymnastics, in the Olympics or something else. And he was looking at times and everything. But I think in this day and age, if I was asked that question now, if I was in the office, I was thinking, long ultra running has got to be a level playing field, I think. Especially the further you go, when you go going over the 100 miles and stuff. Women seem to be really, it definitely was hot. You look at Sanya now, 50 miles to 100 miles, she's winning those. outright. You know, and when you have, we did a 66-mile race, 1 and 2 in, both females. So I think there's, you know, I don't know if you know any sort of, have you come across anything with our scientific sort of articles or anything on it?
It's something I've looked into myself a lot, and I think I would say, you know, the less dependence on physical strength in a sport, the more it's equal. If that was to make sense, I think, you know, the argument that football, rugby, that sort of thing can make it just completely nonsensical. It's dangerous. You know, that's not patronising or chauvinistic in any way. You know, it's just through genetic makeup. It can't even really be contemplated. But I think the ultra running one is an interesting one because, I mean, it's probably, I'm not going to, again, I don't want to be patronising and say there's no emphasis on physical strength. Obviously there is, you know, there is, it's endurance based, it's stamina based, to state the bleeding obvious, right? And also it's a mental thing as well, isn't it? You have to be tremendously mental, strong and determined, you know. Now, sometimes it doesn't matter when you've got some kind of physical mismatch, or it doesn't matter how mentally strong and determined you are, maybe over 100 meters or 200 meters or a boxing match or so on. If you've got an opponent who's so much quicker, so much powerful and domineering over you, then you're not going to compete. But then over a distance like 102 miles, I'd say that's diluted, you know, because that's where mental strength and determination and commitment and endeavor and all those words, so much of that comes into it, you know, and it probably goes beyond simply being fit or being strong or, you know, or be having stamina, high levels of stamina and so on. So I think ultra running is an interesting one. And I was thinking about this a lot after we spoke again with Sana the other day. And I think that is one maybe where I can understand the level out. I'd be interested to see the stats across the board. I know you've just reeled off ones for local based races there, but worldwide, to look into that and see if that pattern continues.
I mean, if you look at worldwide ones, I mean, the UTMB is probably, you know, the Olympics of ultra running, or the, you know, the World Cup of ultra running. It's held in Mount Blanc there in France. It's it's a 100-miler through those mountains.
Right.
They, I think that the girl who won that in 2019, Courtney Dauwalter, American ultra runner in her 30s, she was, I think if she'd have been in the men's field, she'd have been something like 19th or 20th. She'd have finished.
Right. And that's the familiar pattern you get in 5K, 10K races I've seen, you know.
Yeah. So it would be, I mean, that's where, but then that's obviously the elite from all around the world would be at that race then. But then she's entered, you know, I talked about last week, she did a 238-mile race in the Utah desert and won that outright. She beat the next guy in, and these would have been top runners, you know, top ultra runners in it. And she won that by, I think it was something like 8 to 10 hours, 8 hours or something like that, and 20 miles difference. You know, and she's beaten a lot. She's winning a lot of races outright. So, you know, it definitely, so I suppose you can only go on maybe the UNTMB things to show that there is still a difference there. Yeah. But there is a lot of races out there, you know, stage races and other national championships and things like that, which are being won outright by female competitors. But again, it's hard to look at, what the world records are because of, you know, the terrains. I mean, you know, they have had people run 100 miles on a track, but that's just, you know, just to show you can do it, isn't it? Whereas, you know, all these courses are totally different. Like for that one, you look at the UMTB time there, I think Courtney Dauwalter won that World Championships in 24 hours, where Sanya ran the coast path 102 miles in 23 hours. So, you know, you say, oh, she's an hour quicker than her, but it's obviously all these races have got such different terrain and different elevation. That's hard to see like for like. So you can only take each race on its own merit, really.
Yes.
So to say someone who's winning, you know, the females won that race outright, it's hard to say, oh, well, in that other race, someone else won it. You know, a male won that race, same distance, same time, but the terrain is plays such a difference. You know, you can get a couple of hours difference between finishing times. So I mean, I don't know about you, but I've got a what's it called? A researcher now working for me. Noel Lyons. He keeps on sending me stuff. So he was sending me stuff on why females are better ultra runners. I can't find it there now. On better ultra runners than males, and it was down to that they're mentally stronger. Was one of the articles.
Okay.
For the longer distances, and also the makeup of the body. The way it controls with heat and retention of water and hydration. Whether that's, I don't know enough scientific about it, but that's what Noel was sending me all of this, But
I mean, it's an interesting argument, and it comes from the other angle for a change, doesn't it? Because we, so often what this argument comes back when we talk about males and females competing in the same sport and mixing, it comes back to the physiological makeup in it, and the fact that males genetically are born physically stronger, and that's why sometimes it's just not fair to compare. So that's very interesting. If there's a scientific argument and debate emerging from the other side, if you like, that would be an interesting read.
I think it's the thing here that women generally have a larger surface area of mass ratio, which enables heat to dissipate more easily. So basically saying that women are generally better at coping with heat, and explains that ultra runners, the dietitians and everything, that they tend to become less dehydrated. So that's like a physical thing, which gives them going longer. We're talking now when you're going, over the 100 and into stupid distances. So it's.
My dad taught science. My dad taught science, so I might get him to talk me through that one and see if you like from it. Yeah.
And obviously, Noel was listening in your old man's lessons.
Yeah.
But so it is one. It's definitely a race. I think on a national level, and any races sort of in the UK or anywhere when you've got regional races, that quite foreseeable for a female to turn up and to win it, on a regular basis with ultra running, definitely, it's.
I mean, I think you've obviously, when you've got the gymnastics and horse racing as well and things like that, which shouldn't be discounted, but it's probably a different dynamic there, isn't it? I think for a jockey, women again naturally tend to be lighter than men, and obviously the less weight a jockey can carry, the better. Just in the same way, sometimes you see the best racers around in local point to points quite often the younger, slighter people, whether they're boys or men or women, and then obviously with gymnastics, I think that lightness, maybe extra flexibility and suppleness helps as well. So there are, plenty of other sports where women are more than adequate to men, if not superior in a lot of cases. But this is a different one, and it's a different one to analyse. I'll admit that.
I mean, I know, and it's again you have to say whenever you do these conversations that you're not sort of being derogatory or undermining anyone or any sort of person and things like that. There's a difference between male and females. They have their own categories, sort of sporting events, and whether it be in the Olympics or anything now. So, but and we do talk about what they can compete at an even keel, and ultra running is definitely one of those that there's definitely some merit in it, especially on a sort of regional level, I think.
I'll put you on the spot here with a controversial issue, which is it is prevalent in world sport. It is a talking point, or indeed it was a big talking point before the coronavirus pandemic, and it's obviously pushed to the back now, like so many other things. You're running a MUUK event, right? You have a transgender athlete competing as a female, right? In the female category, is well ahead of any other female. Wins it by, I might even win the overall thing, or be right up there with the leading male competitors. Continues to do it event after event, picking up MUUK wins as best female. How'd you handle that?
Well, I just hope there'd be a global pandemic and it all goes away.
I tell you why I've asked before.
Well, you'd have to say, and there is what's that. You would have to look at each. I don't know enough about gender, changing gender and stuff like that. But what I do know is that you would have to look at each one individually and see at what sort of stage they're at. Where it's what sort of stage they are at their changing gender. Because you've had people compete. People who haven't had a full gender change, but they want to compete as a woman. And personally, I don't think that's right. If they have had a full gender change, and they've become a female, you'd have to take advice on it doesn't seem like it's a fair playing field, to be honest with you. There's definitely something that doesn't feel like it's fair, because if you've still got that strength that you were born as a man, or that strength you had as a man, you've got more testosterone, you've got that edge. Is it fair? Because I was looking at some of the ones that were on, the high profile ones that you mentioned, and things talking, well, do you start having a category, a transgender category in events?
I mean, the issue that at the moment, you haven't probably got enough athletes to justify a category for every Olympic event. Where it really hit home to me, I was watching the, I don't know if you picked up on it, the story about the powerlifter, or the weightlifter, sorry, in New Zealand, transgender athlete who's now competing amongst the females and just sweeping all before her, was winning events by a country mile. I believe was in line for Olympic Games selection had they gone ahead this summer, or certainly selection was being debated at the very least for her. And I saw an interview with the weightlifter, the powerlifter or the weightlifter, I can't remember off the top of my head now, who would have been set to miss out had this athlete gone instead of her. And she said, look, and she was speaking perfectly reasonably, and there was no hint of bitterness there. But she'd been training for this Olympic moment her whole life, dedicated however many years to it, become obsessed with it. And she was about to have that taken away from her from a transgender athlete who had come into the female category within the last couple of months. And she spoke that would wreck her. And I can perfectly understand the psychology of that, and why that would seem unfair. And I think that is why it is a subject that it can't be avoided. It has to be debated. I don't think you can just push it to one side and say, yes, they're females now, let them carry on. Because when you're bringing issues like that, then you really are, you're talking mental distress for other people there, let alone, females who were maybe competing at the top and now nowhere near competing because a transgender athlete has come in. You're talking about causing heartbreak to people who are throwing years and years of dedication down the drain as well. Yeah,
and I agree with that totally. You've had as well. I've seen a transgender athlete playing women's rugby. And then they were saying how it was becoming dangerous. Because of the physical hits that she was putting on the other athletes, So, and you've got people who've trained there. I mean, and that they've been, the next person in line, has lost out, and the anguish has caused them and everything. I do. You do have sympathy with that, and there's got to be a level playing field.
Yeah.
I mean, and going slightly off the target, but you have people who train in a sport all their life and put so much commitment into it to represent their country, or whether it be in the Olympics or in an international team, and then just as you think you're getting somewhere, the governing body brings in someone who's found a grandmother who was from that country, and they jump above you, and and you've lost out through to someone someone who's moved to your country and lived there for 3 years with a chance of getting a.
It's an issue that's been pretty prevalent in the Welsh rugby side in the last 3 decades, hasn't it? Ever since the era and the debacle over Shane Howarth and Sinkinson.
Yeah, and I've seen things with the Olympics as well. Where they've with certain sports that they've brought people in, to represent another country, and people have missed out. So, I think, the governing bodies sometimes just want someone who's going to win the best medal, don't they? But, I do think, so they're just, again, it goes back to this lockdown thing, isn't it? The rules have got to be clear, and they've got to be drawn up. Governing bodies and unions or whatever they are going to be trying to get the best players so that the top teams do the best they can, or you win the best medals, or you win a World Cup or a Grand Slam or whatever it be. I think the rules are what needs to be put in place.
I mean, it's important, obviously, to go back to, there definitely is a place for everyone in sport, whether they be female or transgender, and I'm not saying these people shouldn't compete, they absolutely should. But they've also themselves, we talk a lot about mental health and mental well-being in sport. They've gone through what is probably a very difficult process, and a difficult time in their lives, and they've been given a chance in that respect. And sport may help them mentally just as it helps other people for different reasons. But the actual categories they compete in, I think it does need to be addressed, and it needs to be flagged up once we get back to any kind of normality, let's say in inverted commas. It's something that the sporting governing bodies need to address and take pretty seriously, and issue some clear guidance on it.
It is, because you're right there. I mean, those people who've gone through changes like that probably lived a whole life of anguish and being confused and not knowing,
absolutely,
not know what they are. So they then, excel at something, and then they've been told that they don't fit in there. But then, the reality is you've got to be harsh, you've got to be straight and honest. The reality is, are they excelling at something because they've got a non-fit advantage? And it's, I personally, I don't think it doesn't sit right that you've got someone who was born like a man, who's got, the men's sort of makeup of the body, who's able to compete against women. It's not fair. How you sort it out is for better people than me to work out. It
is, but like I said, when we sporting governors do have the chance to meet again, I think it's something that needs to be addressed pretty quick before it escalates, because again, it could turn into quite a vindictive, nasty worldwide issue.
It is. I think Paul Radcliffe is quite vocal about that. I don't know if you've seen that.
From what side is she coming in on it?
That is, it's transgender shouldn't be competing on in a female sport. I'll have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure I've seen quite a few things on Twitter, sort of, questioning, how right it is and how fair it is. But she's been shut down quite a bit for it as well. With people saying that, accusing her of being, genderphobia or whatever it is. But she said, "I'm not. I'm just saying it's not fair."
Yes, and what turns into a bit of debate when you look at the treatment that Caster Semenya has had to go through for so many years, isn't it? She was ridiculed, humiliated to an extent as well. In the end, the scientist or scientific test, whatever, seemed to deduce that she had, elevated levels of hormone. That's an important word, natural in her body. Nothing that, had been processed illegally, or there was no failed test or any kind of doping, and was, I think, put on special medication to suppress that almost by bodies, wasn't she? Because they felt that she was born with these extra levels in her body, and it was giving her an unfair advantage, and she was winning races too easily. So, and then you think of how she was dealt with, then if you're going to put that, it's not exactly the same thing by any means, but it does highlight that you need to address the issue. I would be interested to see what she was feeling on the whole situation right now. I'd be interested to see if she makes any kind of statement on it in the future.
That's harsh on her, just because you're born like that. I mean, if you're born,
absolutely.
If you're 6 foot, 7'4", and you get in the basketball team, and you can't say, "Oh, sorry, it's not fair advantage because you've been born too tall,"
Yeah, no, 100%.
And then everyone else who was competing against her might think, "Oh well, she's just the best of our era because of genetics. Every sports person is better than someone because of their genetics. They got faster twitch muscle fibers.
Absolutely.
They're bigger, they're stronger,
I think that was I think the treatment of it was one of sport's great failings, to be honest, in the last decade. I think it's, almost turned what could have been one of the great athletics careers into a humiliating one, and psychologically she'll carry those scars for a long time. I think long after she's competed. I mean, how do you look back on your career and not say it was tainted or not be bitter? It's just impossible, isn't
it? Yeah. Well, I was going to go on to say about Oscar Pistorius and him running in the thing, but then he had bigger problems than me, so we'll
that we could be a while on him.
Yeah. All right. Well, so there we go. I think a little controversial there. I don't like it myself. I like sulfur straight down the line. The hard facts. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have to tackle some issues as we go along, so why not?
Yeah. Right. So we've got a guest on this week. I think it's. I'm pretty sure it's Sean Holly. I will double check with that. So that will be out on the weekend. So
excellent.
Yeah, see what his views on are. He won't be controversial, I'm sure.
He's well rehearsed.
Yeah, he's well rehearsed. He'll have the party line. All right.
Yeah.
Here we go. So what we'll do is we'll catch you later. All right. So,
excellent. Speak to you later, Fitz.
Hey, cheers. Bye.
Stick to an hour now.
Stick to an hour.
Just an hour.